everyone, it's Adrienne Leah. This video is going to talk about the decks that I've been using lately and a couple of other things that are witchy. So I have my two decks that I created as the first two that I'm going to show. So this is the Faery Tarot, and it is going to be released this year. So I held off on showing this for a little bit because I know that I show it a lot, and also in a way, I didn't use it for a while because I had other decks that I was working with, and then when I got back to it, it was that feeling of this is an intimate deck for me and I know it really well. So these are my paintings, and it really speaks to my soul. I've been wanting to create a tarot deck for years, and I finally got to it, and the process felt, in terms of creating the images, effortless, because it was almost each day that I was painting a new card, and sometimes I would paint more than one card in a day. So this has my friends and family and pets in here, and there are Fae archetypes in here too, specific ones from around the world, and it doesn't seem to be the generic modern Fae archetypes, because I feel like mine portray the more trickster, fun aspect of them having a mind of their own, and an overall playful energy for them too. So it was fun creating this deck. I'll go quickly with this because I do have a few decks to show. I did have a stain on the tin, so there might have been a shadow there. I think it was my hand sanitizer. But this has my Earth Fairy Ogham, which will be released next year. And I hold off on showing this one because I have to center some of the images again. But I love this one, and it also speaks to me. This one's Heather, and you'll see the names at the bottom too, which I wanted to have there so it'll be helpful for those who aren't as familiar with the Oghams. And it also has a similar palette because I have the colors that I really love using, and it has a Fae type of energy to it. So I have been really connecting to these decks a lot lately, especially to center myself too. So for those of you who don't know, I'm now back in the Northeast, and when I got here, one of my dad's properties became available, so that's where I'll be going. And it's been a long couple of months since I've been here, but I'll be moving next week, so I'm very excited about that. And during that, this deck popped up again, and I was trying to find this. I knew that I left it here because I had the book somewhere else, and I couldn't find the deck before I left, so I just left it. And I really love this deck. This is the Tantric Bikini. This is a later edition of the Secret Bikini Oracle, I believe. And mine is trimmed, all the borders on the side. So it has older looking imagery. I love the pictures in here, and the phrases at the bottom are striking. I don't have the book, but I don't use the book. So when I showed this on my channel, I was in New England, and I actually got this from Salem. I saw it in a shop, and I went for it. I would say that the box isn't so compelling as the images are, so it was a little hard to tell what the deck was because it didn't seem to connect with the deck that I saw online, because I was also referencing the original one too. So I love this deck so much, and I love it trimmed. I feel like it speaks to me so much more. The images and words are well made for me. So I have read that other people didn't connect to the guidebook. I didn't use the guidebook, so I'm not, there might be another person on YouTube to tell you if they have used it. But this one's a fun one. This one says horseplay. I keep this out. I had to make a case for it. So I've been slowly making this case for the Kitsune Oracle, and I feel like I've been making progress with it lately. It's almost done. But the Kitsune Oracle needs a new case because the other one is really tethered. And so I love the way that it's turning out. I usually like doing cable knitting, but I wanted to do just plain because I like the design of that too. It's just more of keeping my mind stimulated when I do the cable knitting, and I like the designs of them. So I'm glad that that's almost done. So there's this deck that I haven't shown in a long time, but it's always been one of my top decks. It was a gift from my dad, and this is the Watcher Angel Tarot. I tend to connect to more of an earthier type of angelic energy rather than the really maybe other worldly or celestial or lighter, mainly lighter type of energy for the angel decks, because if you guys have been on my channel, I don't usually work a lot with angels, so I mainly work with the Fae, and I love the cardstock of this. This is on Etsy, and I'm a fan of the person that created this deck because she is a psychic that I used to watch, and the show's not really on anymore. But there's a book that comes with it. I didn't get the book, I just got the deck. And the keywords also speak to me. Sometimes when I don't use the keywords, I just crop them out. But I love the story to it too. I don't know if it's partly because I'm a Libra and I tend to romanticize about a lot of things in life. So this is my main angel deck that I use. And it's just, it's very telling for me. I'm so happy that my dad got this for me. And out of all the decks, this was the only deck when I received it for the holidays, the winter holidays. And I actually had like a reaction to it that I got emotional, and I didn't know why, because I opened it and then I just got emotional from it. So out of a lot of the, well, I do have quite a few decks, and I have traded decks too, so definitely a rare experience for me. Another deck that I love is the Osho Zen. And I love bringing this out when I do. I tend to not work with super bright decks. This tends to be on more the bolder side, especially with the deeper borders and the contrast. So I love the way that the edging turned out. It's one of the newer Sharpie markers, and I love it more than the first one that I had of these. I actually gave this one to my first one to another client that I read with this deck for. So if you're also getting this, the edging makes the cardstock feel thicker, because it definitely feels different when you first get it, and it feels kind of thin. But I like the thickness of the deck now. So it's one of my favorite deck modifications, even though it's not a huge one. So I have the Native American Tarot in this deck bag that I received in a trade. From one of my Instagram tarot reader friends. This doesn't house the same deck that she traded me, but it houses a deck that I use really, again, intimately, and I do use psychic readings for this one. I don't use this for other people, because I tend not to do psychic readings. I suppose I don't do them right now, but I just do that for myself. I just do psychic readings for myself. Sorry, I took a long time to just get that out there. So this is my main tarot deck that I use for connecting to my Native American guides. I do have other decks that I connect to them too with, but this is the main one that I do the psychic readings with. And this is my own. And I love that it was inexpensive, and it feels more of like a sky energy. That I connect to them well with. And I do love the symbolism in here too. It feels like it's the word is not coming to me. So but it has the, I suppose, the divine Native American spirit energy that I love. So with that, I have this deck, and I love this bag. My mom got it for me. I took off the straps because I use a backpack and I tend to use larger bags. This one carries my hefty Animal Wise Tarot, the one that I use for readings. The other one, it reads differently. I think the keywords are bolder, but this one, it has the animals speak for themselves. So I always say that this is the earlier second edition, then the pink one is the first edition, which I love. I got it because I love the color palette and everything and the backing, and this one I covered the backing because it seemed like it wasn't done correctly. And it's a heavy deck, but I call this the earlier second edition because the cardstock is thicker, because before going back to this one, because this was one that was a sample at a shop that I went to a couple years ago in Massachusetts, and I got the Animal Wise Tarot, like a newer one, and it wasn't the same as the one as the sample. And also the borders on here are lighter and the pictures are lighter too. So I think they just changed their cardstock, and I love this one. I carry this in my bag, and I love using this deck for readings because I love connecting to animals. And I was so happy I was able to get this deck and, in a way, still use it, because I did cover this with spray paint on the back, which was pretty extreme, and the spray paint wasn't really drying, so then I had to cover it. It did get a little bit on the front on a couple of the cards, but right now it's not noticeable. It's mainly on the edges too, so I love a well-used looking deck for the most part. Some decks I like to keep in better condition because maybe they were they tend to have better upkeep with that. This one, I love how worn it looks, and I love using this for client readings because it looks like it's a well-loved deck. So before I get into the last two decks, I just wanted to show two things that I've been loving that aren't decks. So this is like a vessel type of mug. It's a clear one where you could put some loose herbs, more like on the medium side, and it won't go into your drink. And you can also steep with it too. It reminds me of the flowering teapot that my friend got me a couple years ago, but I think my mom has that now because I moved quite a bit in the past couple of years. So it's very convenient, especially when I did my labs. And I say did because I finish school next week, so I'm so happy about that. That I graduate, because it's been a while, and it just seems like with everything happening, it's going to be a breather, but I think that there's going to be even more work packed on, but I get a little bit of a break from doing that stuff. So you guys notice I tend to use the same decks, so I try to really think about purchasing more or trading them may be more economical for me because I have the staples that I know that I work with consistently. And I also have my decks that I use, and I have another one that I want to do. So I'll probably get that started when things start to calm down a bit. So the other two decks, it's mainly the Druid Animal Oracle that I don't have a bag for yet, but I really love the animal interpretations. Another deck that I love the animal interpretations of that I haven't been using, but I know that I love is this one's the earlier medicine cards one. This one is the 1990 one. Then this one is the earlier Sacred Path one. And for those looking for the Sacred Path, the earlier one has thicker cardstock, and when you get the older one, some might think that's not very thick cardstock. But if you get the newer one, at least the one that I got, which was, 4 years ago though, so they might have changed it, it was very thin. And I do tend to like thinner cardstock, but it didn't really feel like cardstock, so it was strange to me. So I got those two of the older ones because I wanted them to be together and have more fluidity with them. But I love the interpretations of the deck, and I really connect with the Druid animals and the Native American ones because those are the main spiritualities that my practice is influenced on. And this is the Druid plant oracle that I have in this bag that I made last year, I believe. And then there's another bear on the back. Because I picked what bear that I wanted to be the focus of the bag, and then I hand sewn it. So it's more on the delicate side. But I'll show a couple pictures. In honorable mentions, the Ocean Oracle, the Forest Oracle, and the Hush Tarot, I do keep out too, and those are regular decks for me. Even the Crow Tarot is one that I have mentioned in another video that it was just a connection that I had to accept. So, because the artwork isn't one where I would connect to immediately, but the artwork isn't bad. It is very beautiful. This is the Druid Animal Oracle, and I really love the images in here. I didn't trim either of the decks, so these are part of my Celtic reading, or the reading from the Morgan. I use the Fairy Wicca Tarot to go with it too. And, sorry, I say this in a lot of my videos, I'm not a Wiccan, but I love the deck. I didn't show my whistle that I got. It was so inexpensive, and it was surprising with the price. So I have like a couple more minutes on this video. But with the Druid Plant Oracle, I really love that it's probably right now one of my main plant decks. And because the third deck that I'm creating is going to be an herbal deck. And this one is one that really speaks to me too, and I love the big images, and I love that the use of the background that gives way to the interpretations too, and the associations, and the location of where the plant would be. So, I wanted to show my whistle because I only got it for $6 from the metaphysical store in the mall, and wooden ones tend to be more pricier. You can see that there's lipstick on here. I love the sound. This is longer than my B flat whistle. My B flat whistle is pretty long, so it probably stops right here. And it's a lot longer than my D whistle. So I love the warmth to it because I tend to love softer whistles because some of them can be really high pitched and really thin when it comes to the sound, but this has more of a subtleness to it.